Good evening, everyone. Please stand for the pledge. Thank you. If you'd like, please join us. We have Pastor Rick Ponzo here from Calvary Chapel.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members, Grady, and staff. Thank you for allowing me to come and pray tonight. If you're so inclined, please pray with me. Lord, we thank you that we have this opportunity to come together and, Lord, hear what the council is going to discuss tonight. We pray that you would give them wisdom, that you would give them understanding and discernment and clarity as they make decisions for what will be best for our town. I pray these things in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen. Thank you.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Dickey.
Here.
Vice Mayor McMahon. Here. Councilmember Friedel. Present. Councilmember Grisbowski.
Present.
Councilmember Calavillanakis.
Here.
Councilmember Toth.
Here.
Councilmember Skillicorn.
Here.
Thank you very much. We'll start with our reports by Town Manager, Mayor, and Council. Grady?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Wanted to just remind the Council that we kind of officially started our public budget process. Last night we held our first of our budget open house. We had a number of people attend, and I think that the Finance Director did a really good job of explaining how the budget process works, and people had some really good, well-informed questions as well. So I'm very hopeful. This was something that came out of our strategic plan that suggested that we do more to do outreach. So I was very pleased with how that went. Also, I know we'll probably hear from other council members tonight, but the Concourse in the Hills was just another knockout event, and I'll leave it at that because I know there's others that want to chime in on that.
Thank you, Mayor. And yes, you were right. I wanted to give a shout out to Concourse in the Hills. What a fantastic event for a great cause, and welcomed a lot of people to town this weekend between that and the gun show. So really exciting time for Fountain Hills. We're a much more vibrant community than we get credit for, and it was great to see some traffic in town, even though maybe the traffic itself wasn't so great, but the people were wonderful.
Ditto. Is it my imagination, or were there more cars this year? I felt like there were a lot more cars because I felt like I saw less people because there was so much to look at. Also, the gun show was pretty darn awesome. We actually went both Saturday and Sunday because we decided we didn't buy enough on Saturday. Plus, we walked, so we had to carry the stuff home. I also attended the Greater Phoenix Economic Council 2023 Economic Snapshot, the GPEC Board of Directors retreat, and we had 3 Arizona League calls. There were multiple bills that were proposed, that have been proposed, that take sales tax revenue or power away from the cities and the towns. And I'll just mention them briefly because I know we'll probably want to talk about them more later. But some of the bills just this week that we talked about was HB 2418, which is mandating emergency response time, SB 1117, which is by right zoning, SB 1245, which is mandating where the VLT monies get applied, and SB 1274, which allows data center operators to receive a TPT refund on certain expenses. These are only some of the examples where our state legislators appear to not be acting in the best interest of our town. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. Couple of reports on various things that I've done. The Wednesday farmer markets have been getting very crowded. Now they have two produce people there. So if you haven't been down there, take a shot down there. It's pretty interesting. And I attended the domestic violence regional meeting with MAG. And also, two things I want to mention about that is they actually exposed a direct link of gambling and the problems with gambling and how it relates to domestic violence. So they also had a phone number if anybody needs it. It's 1-800-NEXT-STEP for that. And then also teen dating violence is also on the rise. So on our town website, we've got a series of different webinars that are out there. So the town put that all out on our website. So if, there's a series of different webinars that it will be hosted out there as well. I also attended the rollout of TAMA. So some people might be asking what TAMA is. It's the Avenue Merchants Association, and that was co-hosted by the Chamber and that organization. Jim and Philip, Jim is the owner of Manny's down on the Avenue. So this is a new launch. They're hoping to bring some exciting new programs to the downtown Avenue area. So look for some things and some new happenings down there as well. I also attended the Volunteer Expo, and that was very crowded. And again, kudos to our staff for helping put that on in our community center. I attended the Havenly Art Decoration. If you haven't seen that inverse fountain that's there on the corner, kitty corner from Town Hall here, it's an interesting piece, and that completes just about everything out there, I think, now too. So, and their residency is up over 90-some-odd% there too, so that's good to hear. Also attended the State of the Town conversation put on by our mayor. And the concourse, yes, we had over 1,200 cars, I believe, in there this year, and a record number of people out there, as well as, I think, the numbers aren't in yet on what was raised for Children's Phoenix Hospital, but I hear it's going to be probably another record breaker as well. So again, if you didn't get the opportunity to see that, it was quite an event. We were down there for about 5 hours, and unbelievable amount of cars and people down there too. So one other thing I want to give a shout out to is the Legion Post 58 here in town has got a program, a project going on there where they're going to be replacing their temporary shade structure. And I want to give a shout out to our staff, Rachel and Kevin and Gary Millis, who works with the Legion on this project. The town is going to be the beneficiary of that temporary shade structure at some point. So we've had several meetings. John Wesley and his group were involved with that too. So that is going to happen, and I think plans are going to be submitted fairly soon for that to be taken care of. So again, this is a project where we brought the town and the Legion together, and the town is going to benefit from this directly. So kudos to working together and getting that done. It shows that we can do that. So look for more on that, and also they're raising funds for that. If anybody wants to make a donation, stop by the Legion and drop off a sizable check, will you? And then, like was mentioned earlier, the budget open house, I want to commend David Pock. It was excellent. A lot of good questions were asked and a lot of good explanations as well. So those are important for people that want to know where our money is going, how we're spending it, and he did a good job of answering all that. So thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to first say that Mayor Dickey's State of the Town was fabulous. It was well attended. We have a lot to look forward to. She's doing and has done an excellent job. She keeps our town vibrant. So if you have not attended, you can go ahead and look at it online, and just go to our website and you'll just put in Mayor Dickey's State of the Town. And I definitely would take the time to watch it. It was a great event. I also attended the Dementia Friendly Committee, and we're moving forward with our town becoming a recognized dementia friendly town. I also attended, on behalf of the mayor, the Havenly Art Project opening, and it is fabulous. It is a sculpture that depicts our fountain that was upside down, and it took me a little bit of a minute to kind of like, okay, I understand that, but I do, and it is a great sculpture. I think it's a great place for it at coming into downtown and complements the art walk. There is also a small bench there that you could sit down and reflect when it's not 116 years old. I mean, 16 years out. And so it's really nice to have that corner finished. I attended the ribbon cutting for Mike Pandemides and his wife Coco for Edward Jones, and that was well attended and a fun event. He's lived in this town almost all his life, right? Yeah, so it was pretty fun to be there. I attended the East Valley Partnership Board meeting, and we were discussing working with the Arizona Commerce Authority and went over all of the wonderful new businesses that are going to be coming into Phoenix with billions and billions of dollars and thousands of jobs, et cetera, so that it was really nice to hear the CEO of the Commerce Authority explain all the things that are in their pipeline and coming up. We have a lot to look forward to. There was also a ribbon cutting for Real World Dance Studio. It is a really great place to go learn to dance. It's off, it's Enterprise over there. They've been in town a while, but they finally got their own place and renovated it. So if you're interested in learning how to ballroom dance or anything, just give them a call. They'd love to have you as a client. So today I attended the MEG Economic Council meeting, and we also discussed all the new businesses that are coming into town, and Arizona Commerce Authority spoke there as well. So they're all working in conjunction to make sure that Arizona is very successful. And I did attend the public meeting last night on our budget, and of course with David Pock. He adds a little bit of humor to it. He's funny. He really explains things, and it really helped you to understand what is in our streets fund and how much the last council contributed to that in the millions of dollars, and that moving forward we will have more money for the streets. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. As you can all tell, it's been a pretty busy couple of weeks for us. This is a lot longer than usual. I attended the Munchin Music at the community center. I play the saxophone, as many of you know, so this is really exciting for me. It was sponsored by the Fountain Hills Civic and Cultural Association. They do this once a month from January to April. The Fountain Hills Saxophone Quartet will be featured April 27th, of which I played with them before. I'd highly recommend you go. It's going to be a really good event. Go to ilovefountainhills.com/Munchin Music if you want their schedule. I also went to the special ribbon cutting ceremony for Mike and Coco Pandemides. I met them during the Leadership Academy. They're exceptional people. Like they said, they've lived here their whole life. They have a business here with Edward Jones, and they are very active in our community. And they're very generous to donors to our community. There was the mayor and 4 councilmen that went there, which was the most I've ever seen in a ribbon cutting, and the crowd was spectacular. And so I wanted to just acknowledge that. I also attended the Concours of Hills. I was there with probably 1,000 friends and my 1964 Corvette, which went over pretty big at the show. And they raised so much money for the Phoenix Children's Hospital, and I'm so happy that they do that here, and we're such a fundraiser for such a wonderful cause. And so thank Peter Volney and Alan and Sandy Meehan for putting that on. What a spectacular event. Went to the budget open house again this year with David Pock, where we had a very good conversation about the budget. And next year, I would strongly encourage the people in this room and the people watching to go. That's where you'll find out, how the sausage is made. The state of the town I went to, the mayor did us very proud. She gave a very good presentation. The staff put on a presentation, a audio-visual presentation that was second to none. I was so proud of that event and the professionalism that was displayed. Lastly, there's so many more things, but I did go to the TAMA event with Jerry Friedel, with Councilman Friedel, and it's nice to see that the business owners in our downtown section getting together to promote their businesses, to get that vibrant, if I may quote you, Ms. Mayor, that vibrant community that we seek so much, and they're very energized, and it's just good to see our business owners getting together and trying to get that vibrant, exciting downtown. So thank you.
Thank you very much. First, I really have to thank Peter Volney. That concourse, the town really shined over the weekend with all the visitors here, all the wonderful machines that are around the lake. It was just a wonderful experience. Really proves Fountain Hills is open for business. I also want to thank John Wesley, even though I don't see him right this moment. We went, there he is. We went driving around town looking at signs. Just thank him for his time and his expertise, sharing some of those details of what's where the areas are zoned, and really giving some really good advice there. Also did a tour of New Leaf, the homeless shelter in Mesa, just last week, and that's all.
Thank you very much. I went to usual regional council meeting, and the executive director, Eric Anderson, is retiring at the end of the fiscal year. He had a career at MAG, more than 2 decades. Grady, you know that. We appreciate his leadership and service, and he's going to make sure that we finalize our work program and the budget process that is currently underway. I attended Mesa Mayor John Giles' State of the City this morning. It was quite the production, but I wanted to mention that I felt like we were honored in Fountain Hills for our State of the Town because Mayor Giles from Mesa came, Mayor Peterson from Gilbert, we had Mayor Harkey from Chandler, and then Mayor Lewis, who used to be the mayor of Gilbert, but now he's the head of East Valley Partnership. So it was really kind of exciting to have them come here, and I want to echo thanking the staff under Manager Miller. The video is great, and all of the accomplishments, and moving forward. So again, it was very nice to have everybody there, and I thank the people who did come. Okay, our next item is going to be our special appearance presentation by Captain Kratzer. He's making his way up here. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I just had a couple of things. I know this is called an update, and usually I do try to give some updates, but I just wanted to talk on a couple of points tonight. First off, the concourse and the gun show this weekend. Traffic was very heavy. It was clear. It was well attended. So most of you made a lot of great points about the 2 events. And from law enforcement's perspective, it's been a long time since we've seen that kind of traffic and parking all along the downtown streets. So I know that's a great thing for the town. The best part about that from our perspective was there were no major accidents, no major incidents. Everybody was well behaved. The event went great, the concourse. I don't believe we had any incidents at all during the course of the event, and the same for the gun show. So I think that just speaks to the community and even the visitors who came to it, that everybody enjoyed themselves and the weather was beautiful and it was a great event. The next thing I wanted to do is just talk about one of the programs we have with the Sheriff's Office, and that's just the Citizen Ride-Along program. And I wanted to extend that to residents to make sure they understood that if there was any interest at all in coming and doing a ride-along with a deputy for a patrol shift or a part of a shift, that they're able to do that. And then I wanted to make sure that we extended that to the council as well. Obviously, that would be something that if any of the council members were interested in doing, and Councilmember Kalavianakis came and did that prior to being a council member. She rode with Deputy Hampton, who's our SRO, but she was out on patrol during that time. And I think it was a pretty good experience based on the feedback I heard from council. And so that extension of that invite is there for any of you that want to come do ride along, whatever works best for you, time frame, or if you want to do a whole shift, partial shift. We could do that just if you wanted to see firsthand, what a day looks like with the deputy. And then now I'll move in just to my update. I wanted to talk about some of the incidents we've had recently at some of the local parks in town. And I wanted to just kind of maybe bring some awareness for residents and in a couple of different ways in terms of being aware of incidents at the park and calling MCSO if they see anything going on at the park or anything suspicious. At times, we see a little bit of a correlation when schools are out, where we see a little bit more of vandalism or damage to the park playground equipment or things at the park. And that's not at all saying that, our youth in town are causing problems. I mean, there's always some one-offs, but we have had 3 incidents in the last few months that the town park staff has worked with us in reporting and in a timely manner, and us looking at the video and trying to resolve the issue. And one of the things that MCSO and the town does really well, the park staff, is just communicate really well. The town park staff always reports these incidents really quickly to us. Kevin Snipes and Rachel Goodwin always have a really good understanding of what the issue was, what the damage is. We always need to know what the cost of the damage or graffiti or whatever that issue may be. But with their surveillance system, they've got a lot of surveillance cameras at the parks, and those have been instrumental in us being able to get to the bottom of some of these issues and work with either the parents or the children, or whether if charging is appropriate, to be able to successfully charge and get restitution for the damage to the playground equipment. So, and just, speaking to that is that the amount, when we do have these incidents at the park, it creates a lot of added work for the park staff in terms of cleaning whatever may be there, the repairs, and then that cost for the additional repairs, if it's not resolved, is then passed along to the town and the residents. So it's important, and we're just asking that if we have residents who see something there at the park and they see kids damaging property or doing things, or there is a problem, to please report it, or something suspicious, and we're happy to come take a look and check it out. A couple of the incidents I wanted to just hit on briefly, just so you kind of know what we're talking about. I mean, we have had at the Fountain Park, one of the new pieces of equipment had been, there was 4 or 5 kids that pulled down one of the pieces of equipment, and the video that was there was able to paint the picture of what occurred. We were able to reach out to the town staff, was actually able to identify most of the kids involved with the help of social media, and then with our SRO at the schools being able to identify some of the people involved. And we're working right now with that one to ensure that the parents are able to come in and take care of the charges or the fees, and if charging is appropriate down the road. I wanted to just talk also, when I'm done, about a town ordinance that's in place that we rely on, that is a pretty helpful tool when dealing with situations like this, where maybe the child doesn't need to be charged criminally with criminal damage, but there is a town ordinance that's civil in nature that really gives us the teeth that we need, that helps the town get those repairs done and pass that cost along to the parent. But then we had 2 incidents at Four Peaks Park, where one was a decorative retaining wall with blocks on it, where 2 kids were seen kicking off the blocks and then smashing the blocks, and we were able to identify those students also through the use of the SRO at the school. And in both of those, we utilized the town ordinance in dealing with the parents and the kids, to be able to have some, hopefully, a successful resolution when it gets down to the court. And then the final one we had was 4 kids that were damaging trees and pulling them out of the ground at the Four Peaks Park that were just planted. So, they might be minor issues, but they definitely are issues that impact town staff and the residents. And again, it's not to say that there's a problem at all that's probably any different than any other city or town with park and youth problems, but it is one of the things we've worked closely with town and have a great partnership with park staff, Rachel and Kevin. And I just wanted to touch on this, and I think it's important for the parents to understand if their kids are involved in damaging town property, or maybe they're not aware of what they're doing. The town ordinance is section 11-1-3, and it's called Defacing Public and Private Property. And it basically lays out that it's unlawful for any person to deface any public property, including but not limiting to, and it goes into writing, drawing, and an important one is pasting. We had during the election time a lot of posters that were pasted onto walls and surfaces that caused a lot of cleanup hours for the town. So it gives us the teeth to charge on those, and these are civil in nature, so we charge, but the ordinance requires that the civil offense, that's a civil sanction, but that both the child and the one adult or guardian of the child be issued that civil citation as well, so that then the court can adjudicate the case. And again, it's civil, it's not a misdemeanor or anything like that. So now if it's an egregious matter and it has to be charged with criminal damage, we still have that ability as well, that we could go through the actual criminal charging. So just wanted to bring awareness to those issues. We have spring break coming up, and we're just hoping, sometimes during the school breaks or holidays, we can tend to see a little bit of an uptick in those type of incidents. So we just want to bring awareness. So thank you for the time. I know a lot of that was public awareness, not necessarily an update, but it's helpful with this type of venue to get that out. So be happy to take any questions or comments.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. I just have two things. The first one is just a statement, and then the second one I have a question for you. Good law enforcement begins, of course, with the sheriff's office, but it really resides in the people that live in the town. If you see something, you have to say something. If you see vandalism, you don't want to get involved in it, but take a picture and forward it in an email or take it to the sheriff's office. It's very important. The other thing I found is a lot of times somebody will get a bike stolen or some other very minor, I guess a minor infraction, and instead of reporting it to the sheriff, they post it on Facebook. That's a problem, okay? If there's a law enforcement problem, an issue, do it to the non-emergency, or if it's an emergency, the emergency to Maricopa County Sheriff's Department, rather than the first thing is going on your Facebook page. So that was my statement. I've had some people approach me about the Luna apartments. I don't know if that's on your radar or not, but from what I understand, there's a lot of possible drug dealing, a bad element that's hanging around those apartments. I guess the Presbyterian Church was broken into twice. This is anecdotal. I don't know this for a fact. I didn't witness it. But is that on your radar?
Councilmember Kalavianakis, no, I'm not aware of the issues with the Luna apartment complex, but I will take some time this week to look into that and see if we have any increased calls for service. Or we get a lot of people that put information through the tip line, and it's a pretty effective tool. They can remain anonymous. They can put it in through the computer. We get a lot of emails, and then there's a system that we have where they're all tracked. We get audits each month of our tips that we receive to make sure that we've addressed them. So I'll go back and look at that and look at our calls for service and see if we are seeing an increased reporting of incidents like that, and then do some law enforcement stuff to address that. But I don't know the answer offhand. It's not on my radar currently, no.
It just recently came up, and I'm sorry I didn't give you any notice of this, but I just wanted to call to your attention.
Thank you.
Mayor, Captain, part of it actually went off Councilmember here about the posting on social media. So I saw, I guess Saturday, there were some people that were background breeders that were selling dogs at the concourse. And I actually saw a little bit of it. I think I saw, but online I saw something else posted. A little bit of research. It does appear that it was against the law. I don't know if that is on your radar or not.
No, and typically, Councilmember Skillicorn, for situations like that, it would usually generate a call for service that would kind of get us into motion on that. Most of the time, a deputy walk in the park that was hired for security for off duty. I don't know that they would have observed that and paid attention and realized that it is a town ordinance, that they would have had to have business license or whatever would come with that. So no, I wasn't aware of that. I know during some of the other events like the 4th of July, we get some unlicensed vendors that come out and try to sell goods.
Okay.
And we try to stay on top of those, but we'll note that and make sure on the upcoming events. I'm sure it was primed because of the number of people there that someone saw the opportunity to make some money on the side there.
Yeah, so in the future, I guess I'll be more proactive on that. And then speaking of proactive, over the weekend, I noticed a couple more locations where the signs that are glued on, I was just thinking I was gonna go clean them up. But should I call your office and go, this is where it is?
Councilmember Skillicorn, that's a good question. On some of those things, you know, it's usually at discretion of the person. Things that are posted onto surfaces, you know, if it does require the town or town staff to come out and clean it up, or someone to come clean it up, we typically, we talked about it a little bit at the last one, we like to stat and track where incidents are occurring. You know, that's not to say that, you know, we're now going to know where the people that are adhering posters to things are, but at least gives us an idea, and we can make sure and follow up with the town that has been cleaned up appropriately. So, you know, I would say, yeah, if it's not too much of an inconvenience for you, and if, you know, if it's not tagging your graffiti that makes the look of the town, you know, detrimental, it's kind of more of a discretion call by the person. But if you report it to us, we would take the report. We'd go and make sure the town followed up, town staff, and cleaned it.
One good message I think we got was we have security cameras in our parks, so remember that.
They're very
And thank you so much. Appreciate all your help. Our next item is call to the public. Do we have speaker cards?
Yes, Mayor, we do. First, we'll start with a written comment from Caroline J. Morelli, and you have that in front of you at your dais. She's speaking about the homelessness. And then first up, we have Larry Myers.
Mayor, council, town manager Miller, staff. I'd like to speak tonight on my most not favorite topic, the detox industry, but more directly to the divisiveness surrounding the issue. On February 3rd, I emailed all council members and town manager Miller after John Wesley responded to my query after why the P&Z passed the commercial ordinance on January 9th. It has yet to show up on an agenda for discussion and possible action. 4 council members acknowledged my email, the mayor and 2 others did not. The email was based all in facts after thousands of hours of research by citizens, discussions with legislators, legislative attorneys, as well as the heads of the very departments that oversee the industry for the state. Years, more than 2 to be exact, worth of information. Town manager Miller also courteously emailed me, quote, "The recommended commercial detox facility ordinance from P&Z was intended to be added to the council retreat agenda so that the council would have more time to ask detailed questions about the regulations prior to the ordinance coming back to the council for action. The council retreat has had similar P&Z topics before, so it's not out of the norm," unquote. Well, I don't find that to be true because I researched it back into the previous administration, and delays of 2 months to get to the council retreat didn't seem to appear anywhere. So I would remind everybody that the retreat is 2 months after P&Z acted on this. More importantly, what questions could one possibly have that couldn't be asked in this forum immediately following the P&Z recommendation? Better yet, 4 of you have been sitting on this dais since the beginning of this issue. Why don't you know as much as the citizens and our P&Z right now? Why haven't you been doing your homework on such an important issue as it relates to the very soul of this town? I'm willing to wager that an overwhelming majority of town residents, while not wanting this use at all in town, at the very least expect the people they elect to protect them from some of the worst outcomes of this use in Fountain Hills, and to do it in a timely fashion, not years later. At its core, this is a land use issue and nothing more. The fact that 3 council members choose not to acknowledge my email at all shows a disrespect for the voices of not just me, but a large segment of Fountain Hills residents and the town's own P&Z commissioners who stated at their meeting that they'd like to not see any more delays. So I'd like to see this on the agenda. I would thank you for your attention to this matter.
Next is Crystal Kavanaugh.
Good evening. Commercial detox was a topic at the Town Council retreat in February 2021. Like was stated, on January 9th, 2023, our Planning and Zoning Commission passed well-researched recommendations with regards to land usage in a commercial detox ordinance. Why is it that it was not put on the very next council agenda on January 17th? And why isn't it on tonight for an up and down vote? There is no benefit to the citizens and businesses to keep this vote from taking place as soon as possible. Some do want to delay it until the retreat. For what possible purpose, as Larry asked? More discussion? How has this not been thoroughly discussed over the past 2 years by commissions and councils and staff and the public? Everyone on this dais should be well-versed on this topic by now and be fully aware of the current P&Z recommendations. It should also be noted that while the public can attend the retreat, there is no public comment during that meeting. I'm requesting that the detox ordinance be on the next council agenda on February 21st and passed exactly as submitted by the Planning and Zoning. It's very important that the town have this ordinance in our code in order to be prepared when such a detox application is submitted. And another concern is that the town manager and the mayor chose to use discretionary spending of almost $10,000 to hire a facilitator from the Social Prosperity Group for the upcoming council retreat. Who was looking out for the town when that contract was written? That facilitator, who believes in such things as reparations for the sins of America, is being paid $9,750, whether he ends up participating or not. After reviewing the contract, there is nothing about a cancellation clause or partial payment criteria to be found. He gets paid the full amount either way, if he's there or if he isn't. Pretty sweet deal for him, and approval from the rest of the council wasn't even needed. Was our town attorney even involved when this deal was made by our town manager and Mayor Dickey? Why was a facilitator needed at all for this retreat? And who will be held accountable for this waste of money? Because at the last meeting, the council majority voted to exclude approval of $30,000 for storage until further options could be investigated. And yet they were thrown under the bus inappropriately as being against wheelchairs. The $10,000 being paid to the unneeded facilitator and his courageous conversations could have been put towards the storage budget, and then only $20,000 more would be needed. And why is the town even in the business of storing and loaning out medical equipment anyway? It seems that this might be a better project for a local service club or charity organization. Thank you for your attention.
Next, we have Liz Gildersleeve.
Good evening, all. I remember getting Mayor Dickey's shiny campaign postcards in the mail last summer with slogans like "Residents First" and "Preserve Small Town Character." Yet here we are, waiting for the commercial detox ordinance, as mentioned, passed by the Planning and Zoning Commission on January 9th to be placed on the Town Council agenda by Mayor Dickey and Town Manager Grady Miller. It should absolutely have been placed on tonight's agenda. Was leaving it off intentional or yet another oversight? Neither reason is a good reflection of the mayor's and the town manager's leadership. Because residents haven't been speaking out about their concerns about the proliferation of sober homes and detox facilities in our small community for the last 2 years, you still don't understand the urgency? There are rumors that a detox facility might go into Four Peaks. Another rumor floating around is the possibility of a second detox facility off Shea near the neighborhoods behind Target, and that property deal just closed. The strong ordinance passed by the Planning and Zoning Commission on January 9th would finally put restrictions and safeguards in place and make our community less vulnerable to unintended consequences. Once again, the mayor has not put residents first. Lastly, and completely off topic, I want to thank Councilman Skillicorn for taking the time at the last council meeting to shake the hands of the stellar students. Not sure why some of the liberal ladies in our community were so offended by this gesture and the audacity of Mr. Skillicorn in joining the photo. Can't everyone collectively celebrate our exceptional students? It was a bright spot, and I hope it continues. Thank you.
I think I can respond, Aaron, a little bit to some of this. The detox idea of the zoning did come up in retreat a couple of years ago, and what we did was get a lot of very panicked people who didn't want us to talk about it anymore because they felt that this was sort of an invitation rather than a way of preempting, or at least putting some zoning in that would you know, make it so that we had a place for them to go and that it was limited somewhat, which I believe is what we'll come to. The idea of like delaying this is like, it's not a thing. Nobody gave anything to either one of us, told us to put it on an agenda. It's just the process that we were going through. If you don't want us to do that, we can put it on the next agenda. This is, the idea of proliferation of sober living homes. There were 4 sober living homes when I became mayor. There are 4 sober living homes right now. It has never changed. That was never a thing either. So I just want to set that record straight, and we can move on. Any other cards?
Yes, Mayor, we have more. Diane Price.
I'm Diane Price. I have, and I left my notes right there. I've been a resident of Fountain Hills for and I want to thank you all for all the hard work that you do to keep the Fountain Hills star shining. I'm going to take this opportunity to provide you with some information, and I do this because this is the town and the people that I am very proud of. On February 1st, the Arizona Republic published a story with this headline: Fountain Hills' new conservative ideology tilts against local pragmatism. And as Warren Buffett said, it takes 20 years to build a reputation, and it takes 5 minutes to ruin it. The Arizona Republic has a circulation of 130,000 print papers. It has an average of 11.4 million web visits a month. It has 430,000 followers on Twitter. And say what you will about it being a left-leaning source, it did endorse George Bush and John McCain for the presidency. The article attracted 7 pages of comments, and I'm going to read some of those comments. These are not my words. These are the words of the people that commented. The first one is from Charlene D., and she said, this new rot group is doubling down on their rhetoric, making the town less and less of a desirable place to live. Property values will be effective when the street in front of your home crumbles and the parks fall into disrepair. The old, white, scared, angry, greedy, conservative voters of Fountain Hills have only themselves to blame. WJ wrote, it sounds like ROT is a fitting acronym for that pack. Michael P. wrote, when you invite the devil into your house, don't be surprised when he makes a mess of things. Patrick M. wrote, they are making some ridiculous decisions. Voters out there will come to regret their choices to elect people that want to fight culture wars instead of taking care of their town. Carla A. wrote, a town that is too far right for even Joe Arpaio is absolutely frightening. Michael P. wrote, one thing ideology can't change is math. The numbers speak for themselves, no matter how many rants are wrapped up around them. Good luck with your roads, Fountain Hills. Gregory R. wrote, what a way to send your town on the road to ruin. Good luck maintaining your property values once you destroy the area with unkept roads and signs everywhere. Paul S. wrote, Fountain Hills wants to vote to destroy itself. I ain't going to stand in the way. Marianne S. wrote, wow, what a sad state of affairs in beautiful Fountain Hills. Sure glad I decided not to live there when I moved here. That's it. I hope you pay attention to what people are saying outside of us. Also know that the Arizona Republic is part of the USA Today network, and when I was visiting Des Moines last week, this article appeared in Des Moines, Illinois, Iowa also.
Our next speaker is Amy Stokes.
Good evening. I am here to request oversight of the building department. I moved here or bought a house here in March, finally moved into my house after remodeling it in late December. And the house next door to me has been under construction since I bought my house. And there have been I and multiple neighbors have inquired multiple times about the house next door and the apparent lack of oversight there. Lately, the biggest issue for me as a homeowner is they have been piling debris on my property. And I have submitted requests to the online submittal form asking for it to be removed. I sent a complaint on the 26th of December, another one, I think January 4th, and Jeff, the inspector, finally came out on January 6th and asked for the hay bales and cinder blocks to be removed. Not all of it was removed. There's still a big pile of sand about 3 feet in diameter from whenever they built their concrete wall. And I asked, so that afternoon, I asked for that to be picked up, another visit to be able to come out and say, hey, you didn't finish. And then they never did come back. I think I sent another complaint on January 16th saying, no one's come by. And then they piled another pile of hay bales and more cinder blocks on the corner of my property because evidently there's no oversight. And so I sent another complaint saying, please come. Evidently you're not listening. You're not actually responding to these. And then on Saturday, it had been a month since my original complaint. I moved the hay bales and tried to get some of the hay bale sand off the corner of my property. The hay bales are in such, they're rotting. So when I've moved them, they collapsed into the street. The contractor saw me doing this, just watched me doing it. And the hay bales are still in the street because he hasn't gone to pick them up. And so I just really don't understand why we have an ordinance that says construction debris should be contained on your property if we have a building department who doesn't actually oversee that. So I'm hoping that you can actually inquire with the people we are employing to see why they're not doing their job.
Yes, Ms. Stokes, I appreciate you reporting this issue. Mr. Wesley, who is our Development Services Director, I will be talking to him first thing in the morning about this. I've taken down your information. Okay. Did you also put down a phone number on your call to the public? Is that on? So I can follow up with you? Yes. Thank you for reporting this, and I'm sorry you've had to go through this period of time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the last one is Jean Selecta.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. My name is Gene Selecta. I live in here in town. Roads, roads, roads. Our roads are falling apart. They're failing. We have a $100 million problem, and roads need to be on every council agenda. I don't understand that. I attended a budget open house last night, which is very eye-opening. I enjoyed that. And not surprisingly, roads was a focal point. It suggested the severity of the problem, but leaves the resolution to the council where it belongs. The Streets Committee was mentioned. The last time the citizens were provided an update on roads from the Street Committee was October 18th. I watched the video. Every one of our 25,000 citizens should watch it. And roads need to be on every council agenda. But I'm here to suggest that more urgency is needed. More ideas are needed. We need less focus on invocations, $20,000 lobbyists, or TikTok. In that October 18th presentation, we were told that 25 to 33% of our roads are failing, F. That means that those roads need to be rebuilt, not repaired. Roads have about a 30-year life. Most of our roads are over 40 years. We have 160 miles of roads, so that means 40 to 53 miles of roads need to be rebuilt. Saguaro's 4 miles of rebuilt was $8 million. Simple math says that those failed roads today would cost between $80 and $100 million to rebuild. But more bad news. The Streets Committee member told the council that the budgeted $2.5 million annual amount spent on maintenance is woefully insufficient. So the cost will escalate by millions every year. So we need lots of money that we don't have. We need more ideas, however. We need to start thinking outside the box or admit we need new revenue sources. The $8 million CARES money is a down payment, not the silver bullet. Stop nibbling around the edge. And roads need to be on every council agenda. Here's an outside-the-box story for you. A decade ago, we had 5 trash haulers to choose from. That meant we had 5 trash trucks rolling down the streets instead of 1. But a trash truck weighs as much as 15 to 20 times that of an automobile. Federal and other studies by road experts have calculated a single trash truck has an exponential impact on roads. That's equivalent of 2,000 cars. Our town staff calculated savings of millions of dollars in road repairs if we went to a single hauler. We realize those savings every day today. The council voted at that time 4-3 in favor of a single hauler. We had 4 heroes that day. Under great pressure, Mayor Schlum, Dennis Brown, Henry Leger, and Jeannie Dickey were those heroes. Thank you.
That's it for public comment.
Thank you, Linda. Our next item is our consent agenda. Does anybody want to take anything off or have a motion?
Move to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Our regular agenda item. Our first item is guidance and direction to staff on possible parameters for temporary sign regulations. We'll hear from John, and then we'll see if we have any speaker cards.
Good evening, excuse me. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I've got a presentation to step through here this evening that I hope will help focus the discussion on learning what it is the council would like to see as I take this forward for modification to what we've had previously in the sign ordinance. So just a little bit of quick background. A couple of weeks ago, the council voted to repeal a couple of sections of the sign ordinance. And so to move forward with a new ordinance that would have the changes that the council feels are necessary, we'll need to go through a public hearing process, get a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission. And so tonight, I'm looking for, again, the basic direction from the council for what you would like to see so we can focus those discussions going forward on what you think the concerns are. New regulations must be content neutral. We can regulate sign types, material, zoning, size and height, number, location, time, those kinds of place, manner items. So with that, what are temporary signs? Typically, they are a material that's subject to deterioration. They are not typically permanently attached to the ground, a building, or a structure. and generally they're intended to serve a short-term purpose. Here are some of the sign types that are possible for consideration in the ordinance. Some of these are already in our ordinance or have been in the ordinance. Others haven't been. But these are the types of things. And when we talk about our sign regulations, it's focused on the types of signs, nothing about the message that's conveyed, but the form that they take. So again, one of the things we can talk about is the material that temporary signs would be made of. These are some things, the first ones that are in the definition section. So they're still in the ordinance because they're in Section 601. But again, as we talk about temporary signs, it's possible we may see some need to amend some of this language in terms of definition and what types of materials they're made of. And then we also had in Section 607 a statement about the durable materials and being properly maintained. When we look at the key provisions that go into making up a sign ordinance, I think it might be helpful to look at in terms of a table along this line that lists the types, and then what do we want them or not, and if so, under what conditions. And so here, using what was in the code that was repealed and the sign types that were listed, is a summary. Again, this not all the detail language that goes with each one, but it's the basic parameters that I think are key to then writing the rest of the code. So what I'd like to do, or I think a way to focus the discussion this evening, Mayor, would be to go through each of these and for the council to give me some feedback on each type. And we can try it here with the first one and see if it works like I hope it does. But with A-frame signs, they were allowed previously. Do we want to continue allowing A-frame signs? Yes. See some yeses. They were allowed in commercial and industrial zoning districts, but not in residential districts. Is that appropriate? Seeing some yeses. The maximum size allowed, 6 square feet, 3 feet tall, which is a fairly typical size for those types of signs. We allowed 1 per business.
I would request I go to 2 per business.
Okay. We can look at that. Location.
Mayor, and I think we have a specific proposal, but you know some of the details of it too. So,
yeah. And I'm looking for the direction, from the council as a whole here. So, if there are any ideas to, bring them up so we can discuss them, and I can see, again, if I'm getting direction.
What's
from
the
council.
idea of if someone's on a corner or if it's hard to see in one
Mayor,
place?
so I think the specific what we had discussed was similar maximum size, but if you have 2, there would be like a maximum size. So effectively, if you have 2, you can't have 2 of the big ones. It'd be 2 of the, like just a step down size, basically. Just the opportunities for businesses to have exposure, but not have signs everywhere, and then not have big signs ever also.
Okay, so if our size height is 6/3, you're saying that it's divided by 2 so that they can have 2 signs? I'm sorry, I was unable to follow.
So I believe we discussed that I'd have to check notes of the.
Who is we?
John, myself, and then we also had a meeting with Councilman Friedel. And this should be directed to the mayor and Councilwoman. So I think the specific we're thinking about is if it was 2, it was 8 feet versus 6 if it was a single. So they could do 2 smaller signs or the 1 bigger sign. Is that helpful?
Councilmember, if I may, my summary or recollection of that is there'd be a sign allowance, a total of 8 square feet or whatever we come up with, and then you could have 1 8-foot or a 6 and a 2 or a 4 and a 4 or whatever, as long as you didn't go over the maximum allowed.
I think because we were writing down some details, and I think the idea of 1 at 6, but if 2 to 8, something like that.
I'm sorry, you don't have your notes with you from a conversation that you've had about something that the entire council is going to vote on? Is that what I understand?
I don't believe we're giving direction to John this evening, and we have we've done quite a bit of research, and we have a pretty specific game plan that we're going to be presenting to John.
I thought that's what we were doing right now, was being specific and giving John a specific game plan. Did I miss out on something?
No, I don't think you missed out anything at all.
I guess the reason I would like to go to two A-frame signs is, for example, like down by Euro Pizza Cafe, they've got entrance in the front, and then they have entrance in the lake in the back. There's a gentleman down there that owns a yogurt store. He has put all of his life savings into that store. He works a full-time job. He works there on Saturday and Sunday. He is trying to make a living here in Fountain Hills with that yogurt shop. Him not having a sign in the front of his business and then in the rear of the business by the lake is hurting his business. And when he puts his signs up there, compliance officers come and tell him he's got to take them down. That's why I'd like to have two signs, two A-frame signs. I'll just put a little meat on the bones.
Can I ask a question, John? So are we talking about on their own property, correct?
So for the most part, yes, Mayor, we'll get into some of the
This
situations
isn't the
where
right-of-way
allowed
stuff.
off
Okay.
the right-of-way.
So would you entertain the idea that this is only something like confined in certain areas? Like when we first did the first sign ordinance, we figured out some ways to compromise and to make things okay in the downtown area, that kind of thing. I mean, are you seeing a more widespread issue, or is it more, because that's specifically, that makes sense. And that's sort of what we did with Park Place, because we knew they really didn't have any right-of-way, so we said, okay, you can, or they didn't have any property, so they said, okay, you can put it on the sidewalk. So is there any wiggle room with this not being just across the board, everybody can have two A-frames, 8 feet? I mean, do you see that an area where this is more of an issue than another?
Sorry, Madam Mayor, if you wouldn't mind clarifying, I'm confused the reasoning behind, I mean, same question, but why would we limit them to one? Does it hurt to allow everybody to have two? I don't see a reasoning to make that only downtown specific. What if somebody in the northern area of town has two entrances and wants two A-frames? I don't see a reason why to specify that and what the huge difference between 1 and 2 would be there. I
think, obviously, we went through the sign ordinance in a way to try to balance between allowing business-friendly, that whole phrase, and aesthetics and sidewalks and safety and all that stuff. So that's where we landed and unanimously voted. And so I think that I would want to have one sign, because I think two signs in front of every single business is probably a lot. So I'm just asking if you've considered that this might be something that is more prone to work in one area over another. It's up to you, obviously.
Yeah, I would be in agreement with that if the business owner can show a compelling reason why they would need two signs. That if they could either be written in the code, or the zoning officers could be advised that in cases like my friend at the yogurt shop, I don't know how you'd be the one that would write the ordinance. It might be kind of difficult, but that's the kind of thing I think we have to make allowance for, because there's a number of businesses in our town that are on the lake that do have front and rear egress and access.
Thank you, Mayor. We also have a couple businesses along Parkview that are on a blind corner that also need a couple of signs. So if we can make allowance for those exceptions, I would be good with that as well.
Thank you. I think, John, it comes down to whether, do they get permits for these? They don't, do they?
So, Mayor, the current code, where we did make the allowance for them to be in the right-of-way in the town center area,
Okay.
it was that for those to go in the right-of-way, they were to get permits.
Is the
But
Parkview
the ones that
area?
stay on their
Okay.
private property don't require a permit.
Okay. Is the Parkview area considered that whole downtown area too?
So, yes. I'd have to
Okay,
look back
so
at
we
my map to
might-
be sure. I think we did both sides of the avenue, yes.
Could we have a provision just in general of people appealing anything? So say we said, okay, let's have two in the downtown area, even though there probably will be places that might be a little bit crowded, but say we could do that. And then if there's a business someplace else that has two entrances, or is on a corner, or has one of these things that they could, appeal, for lack of a better word, could that be put in here in general?
Mayor, I'll say anything's possible. We've just got to come up with the right language for it, and certainly willing to take a look at a variety of things. Comparison might be for permanent signage in the Plat 208 area, because they have the front and the back, there's an allowance for both sides for permanent signage. So we could look for a similar thing on the temporary signs and A-frames. And again,
Well, that
I
makes
think there's
sense.
some
I'm
things
not-
about lot size.
Don't want to make things
that
really
type of
hard on you. If something like that exists, but if not, then maybe stores that are kind of small or concentrated wouldn't have two anyway, because they'd be right next to each other.
Okay, anyway, we're glad to look at along that line, see what we can come up with. And then the last one along that line is the location. So this gets a little bit to one of your things you brought up, Mayor. So on lot is where they're typically required to be, except there was a provision in the town center for them to go in the right of way, because there's some places that just don't have anything but in the right of way. And then also the weekend directional signs could be in the right of way. So that was an exception.
Could you please repeat that? I'm sorry.
So for the A-frame signs, they're required to be on lot, but the code allowed two exceptions. One was in the town center pedestrian area, where some businesses don't have any private property to put the sign on, so there they could go in the right of way. And the other is the weekend directionals, the open house, the garage sales, those could go in the right of way.
But those were limited.
Right, on time, yes.
I'm fine with keeping that.
If I could address the council and Mr. Wesley. Before we had this meeting tonight, I was a little concerned if we're going to go through this sign ordinance, temporary sign ordinance, line by line like we're doing right now. I anticipate that we'll all be having breakfast at Denny's tomorrow morning, because it's going to go on all night long. I would like to make a motion to move to postpone consideration of this temporary sign ordinance and possible direction of the sign ordinance until the town council retreat on February 28th. At that time, we'll have a chance that we can meet with you individually to go over this and give you our concerns. Based on that, you can draft an ordinance. We can discuss it at the February retreat. At that point, it'll be put back on the agenda to go either to planning and zoning or to town council, so we can have a public debate and have the people that see the end result and not how the sausage is being made tonight. So that's the motion I'd like to put on the table.
I'd like to second that motion, and if I could add a comment real quick. I'm not changing the motion, just providing my reason. I think that dealing with it all in one might be a little bit easier on the public. So I'd like to second that motion. I believe we do need to wait until we've heard speaker cards. Is that correct, Linda?
We really only have one written comment. We have no speaker cards.
Oh, so we have it here already in front of us. Okay, thank you.
Yes. It's Liz Gildersleeve.
Mayor, may I?
You know what? I don't think we're not allowed to debate a motion to table, are we?
It's not a
can I ask for an
motion to
amendment?
table, it's a motion to postpone. It's
Said table, yeah.
it's Robert's Rules of Order.
I think you said table, though.
No, I didn't. I have it written down right here.
Okay.
Oh, Hannah might have said it on the second, but on the first, I have this written down. I also have the provisions in Robert's Rules.
Could we consider
that
just
does
a
make this-
brief amendment? I would still like to public notice for, is it March 7th, P&Z?
13th.
13th. I still would love to include that in the motion. You know, if we have something ready to submit, I'd like to be able to, be able to submit it on time.
I think I need help, Aaron. So if we had a motion to postpone, we can amend that or not?
I don't believe that motions to postpone are amendable. I think that it's probably fair to say that we wouldn't change the date of the public hearing. It's already been published.
Okay.
So.
It hasn't been published yet, it's due next week.
Due next week.
That's the anticipation, I'll draft it
Okay.
ready for publish.
Thanks, John.
I still don't know if we can debate a motion to postpone.
Well, I mean, maybe, not 100% sure either whether a motion to table versus a motion to postpone is debatable or whatever,
Yeah.
but maybe I can at least provide a little bit of direction. If you can't debate it, maybe I can at least provide a little bit of direction. I think the biggest concerns, and John, you can piggyback on this if you wish, if the council wishes to postpone, that's fully within the council's purview to do so. You can go ahead and vote on that, and we can postpone that to the retreat. The conversation's clearly going to have to happen at some time or another. And with respect to the turnaround between, I just don't know John's capacity for, he's very capable. I just don't know in terms of timing between getting direction, which we may or may not receive, between February 28th, or at the February 28th meeting, and time to implement those provisions for consideration at planning and zoning. So keep that in mind as you vote on a motion to postpone.
I think that you obviously have specific items that you've already looked at. So if you want to bring them to the 21st meeting, our council meeting, with the specifics of what you want to do, and then he'll have them, and then we can discuss them on the 21st. Because a retreat, we can't take any action. So
Right, that's why I wanted to after the retreat, to take it back to town council where we can take action, and it will be properly noticed.
I was just thinking, since you have specific things in mind, if you want to get it all together by the 21st, we can actually vote on it, and make the changes there and vote on it. You know, if that's amenable to you. I mean, I'm fine leaving this sign ordinance exactly the way it is, so you know how I'm going to say on all this stuff. Yeah.
Right.
So, but since you have items that you've already looked at, I think if we had those in front of us, like you obviously just had the 8-foot and all that, bring that back to the next meeting, and we'll go through it and decide what we want to adopt, and then we would be ready for the planning and zoning, and then he'd have plenty of time.
If I may, Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
I kind of wish you guys had brought notes tonight. Please bring them next time, because if you had a meeting and you have notes that you would like us to review, I know my memory's not as good as it used to, so please bring your notes so we can refer to your notes and actually discuss what it is you want to do instead of what you think you wanted to do. I would truly appreciate that.
Actually,
Council member, we did suggest that, just so you're aware of that. That was suggested previously to this meeting today. It didn't happen.
Yeah, I made the request myself. I sent the letter to Grady and to Mr. Wesley. I wanted to go through the notes in advance of today's meeting, and they suggested that was not a good idea. Actually, I did call Mayor Dickey today. We were too busy to coordinate our conversations. We could have avoided this conversation tonight. I still think that this is something that needs a thorough discussion, and I do want the public to be a part of that discussion. That's why I thought maybe with the retreat, I know it's not actionable, but they can't talk. But that's why if we brought it back to council, they would have kind of the rough draft of what we're looking at, and then they could have input on what they like, what they don't like. And I think that's pretty responsible.
Well, I just want to be clear. We heard about this at 7:30 last night, your request, and I got back to you today, but this had already been on the agenda and had already been, noticed for tonight. I think if that's what the council wants to do, we'll do what the council wants to do here if the majority want to have this at the retreat. But I do want to point out something that Mr. Wesley said, is that he has his plan to go before planning and zoning on March 13th. So I heard you, Councilmember Kalavianakis, that you're thinking of the retreat and then having one more meeting before the council to take action on what you guys talk about at the retreat on the sign ordinance. So the only concern is timing-wise, it's not going to square up with the March 13th P&Z meeting.
I would certainly be amenable to having it go from the retreat to P&Z back to council.
Even if it delays the planning and zoning, so it doesn't, because March 3rd, they only meet once, correct?
Once a month is their typical meeting times, yes.
Okay.
So we could bump it from the retreat to planning and zoning and back to the council. That sounds like a good plan to me.
Okay. When you emailed me earlier,
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of one more time to come before council for action. Otherwise, I would have given you some suggestions
Yeah,
on
because,
that.
just for the public to be involved in the process, that's why I wanted to do that.
Could I just quickly clarify? Are we saying that, Brenda, if you wouldn't mind giving me a nod if I'm interpreting you correctly, and I said that through the mayor, sorry. The meeting, our retreat, you want to discuss it. Our direction to town staff is to bring that straight to P&Z so that it's on the March 13th agenda. And then after they've made their recommendation, then we see it again, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to vote on postponing until the retreat,
That's
Okay.
correct. That's what's on the floor.
not to another meeting. I'm trying to avoid the retreat because it's going to be really long. But, okay. So all those in favor of postponing till the retreat, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes. Thank you. All right. Our next item is for the administrative policy for invocations at town council meetings. Do we have speaker cards on this item?
We do not, Mayor.
Thank you. So let's see, would this be Grady or Aaron or for the invocation?
Unless Grady wants to lead out, I'm happy to take this, Mayor. Mayor and Council, you recall that at the January 3rd, 2023 regular meeting, the council voted to reinstate or to resume the invocations at regular council meetings. We've done so the last 2 times. Part of the discussion that we had during that meeting and during the previous meeting of January 17th was bringing back a policy to ensure that we have a process for fairly and appropriately scheduling and selecting individuals to offer the invocation. We had this item on the last January 17th agenda, and it was tabled until tonight. It's back for your discussion this evening. I will make the council aware that we have a proposed policy in the packet. It's the same packet as last time. The only change that would necessarily need to be made would be the date at the top. We have also received information, I believe they're available for you on the dais here, of 2 alternative policies from a couple of council members that contain some similar language with some differences. So those are for your consideration as well. I will head off some of the discussion by saying that I have looked at all of the proposed policies, and with respect to different processes for having the manager's office or his designee handle it, et cetera, I'm fine with whatever process the council wants to put in place. I believe they comport with constitutional standards. It's ultimately going to be up to the council's discussion what you want to do. So we're recommending adoption of one of these policies or some combination of one of these policies tonight.
I see the couple different policies here. I would like to make a motion to approve the one that it says adopted February 7th. Does everyone see that one? No, I see adopted February 7, 2023.
I would like to have discussion before we vote, please.
I think we should give people a moment to look over both, yes.
Also, I'd like to hear any public comment as well.
Just a point of inquiry. The one on the top, this is adopted February 7th, 2023. That was the draft that I had written in collaboration with our town attorney. Well, no, it would be if we voted in today, and that was on January 17th. It said adopted January 17th, so it's exactly what our town attorney did on the last proposed draft. I literally took this from the town attorney's draft. No, it would be, because that's exactly how Aaron wrote it last week. Because if we voted on it tonight and we adopted it, it would be adopted February 7th, 2023.
It was how Aaron wrote his last meeting as well. I can confirm that.
Right.
I understand that, but this is a changes to what he adopted. It's not what is adopted or was adopted.
Well,
is my
Aaron's wasn't adopted
understanding,
either.
right?
Yeah, Mayor and council, I agree.
trying to
There was
understand
nothing was adopted at the last
Right.
council meeting.
Thank you.
Now, and who wrote the second one, may I inquire?
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
There's a second draft that somebody else wrote.
Oh, I don't want to speak for her, but I believe that Councilmember McMahon was the one.
Yes,
who-
may I speak, please? Thank you. I read Aaron's proposed general terms or terms to present for presentation of invocations. And I think that in looking at both Brenda and mine, I think it covers basically all of it except with a few exceptions. I would like clarification and saying voluntary participation, no one will be required to stand and or participate in any invocation. I would like the time limitation that we previously discussed to be put in it, and invocation shall be limited to 1 minute. And I think that the respect for diversity, I think that Aaron has that stated a little bit more concisely than what I put on it, but it's basically saying that we can't discriminate and it's diverse, has to be diverse. And also that, it's first come, first served basis. The council can't call. It's up to the person interested, is my understanding, to call. And then that the town manager and or his designee is going to keep a list and then have the people speak on the dates acknowledged. Correct?
Mayor and council member, sort of. So that's, I think we're halfway there with that comment.
Okay.
Yeah, so with respect to the way that at least the town's policy was proposed, the one that's in the packet, and then the February 7th policy, Brenda's policy, was proposed, the council, consistent with our prior practice, the town manager's office or his designee, consistent with our prior practice, was responsible for contacting individuals to give the invocation. My suggestion is going to be that to the extent there's an individual who calls and there's a vacancy, otherwise, how else would you get people who aren't affiliated with any faith group, right? If they have a substantial connection to Fountain Hills themselves, how would they be contacted ever by the town manager's office? So I think as long as we make for that provision, that process of the manager's office being responsible for proactively scheduling is constitutionally permissible. It has been found to be permissible in other cases. If the council wanted to go the direction of doing exclusively individuals signing up, that's an option for the council to consider too. But I'm comfortable with the manager's office or the manager's office proactively soliciting invocations. Did that
Okay.
answer the question?
Yes, thank you. Also, this is going to occur once a year, right? So we're going to say once a year, the town manager and or his or her designee will keep a schedule of meeting dates for the following year on which the individuals can request an available date. And the database list shall include known religious leaders and individuals who have requested to speak and with a reasonable connection to Fountain Hills.
So my only comment to what you said, Mayor and Councilwoman, my only correction or clarification to that would be that in the policy that's in the packet and in the policy that Councilwoman Calavianakis has put forward, there isn't any requirement that it be filled for an entire year. It's up to the town manager's discretion as to how far in advance he fills that calendar.
Okay, all right, but it's going to be once a year that they take names and stuff, or, as far as start the list. Because if it's not completely full, then we're going to have a moment of silence.
Well, if there's no one available to give the invocation,
Right,
we would have
okay,
a moment of
all right.
silence.
So that needs to be in there, that if it isn't completely full, then there's not going to be an invocation, it's going to be a moment of silence or nothing at all, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's assumed by implication.
Sometimes people don't come.
Right.
Okay.
Are you okay with the minute part?
Yes, I'd like to be a minute. And I think that voluntary participation is really important. And I noticed in the other one that we received, there is some discussion or some saying substantial connection to the town. Well, given what is written, I don't really think that substantial connection is going to be able to work, because in what's said here, you're saying that they have to live here a year and have other requirements in order to be considered or to have an invocation. The majority or a lot of our residents don't live here a full year. They live here 3 months or 6 months or whatever. I think that if there's a year requirement, meaning substantial, that is, you're going to alienate a lot of people and prevent people from being able to put their name in to have an invocation. And how do you enforce? How do you know they've been here a year? And in addition, there was another comment, let me see if I can read it, that that the council, let me find it. That the council select as a default, but the council cannot make a selection. We have to be completely independent of selecting for the invocation, and that's why it's going to be designated to the town manager and/or his designee.
I don't believe there's any recommendation by the town council to select anything. I don't know what you're reading. It's obviously not my draft. Also, I would like to say that, to address your first point, it's right in my draft that in the case of a representative or group or church group or congregation where the representative is not a town resident or has not been a resident for at least 1 year, a substantial number of town residents must be members of the group or the congregation. And so the 1-year rule would not apply to somebody that was out of town that had say it was a pastor that lived in Scottsdale but had a church following here. As long as a substantial number of town residents belong to that church, the person does not have a residency requirement or the year requirement. That's actually been addressed.
But how can you prove that they're a member of that congregation? What constitutes that? I mean, I just don't think that's something that is enforceable.
That would be up to town staff.
I don't think we have the staff to enforce that. And I stand corrected. The reference I was making is an organization may request to be placed on a list to deliver an invocation in a future town council meeting. Again, we don't take the request. We can't take the request. It has to be through the town manager and his or her designate. So I don't think it's appropriate for somebody to stand before the council and make a request when we already have a policy set up for how that's going to be.
Super quick. Aaron, is that true?
So I think what we're talking about, or what I was saying was, primarily, the manager's office will be responsible for scheduling those meetings, right? If there's an opening on our calendar, if someone calls to offer it, then yes, we could entertain that person, assuming that they otherwise meet the requirements under this policy. Does that make sense?
Yes, so
Okay.
we would technically take requests if we have the date open and someone says, I would like to do the invocation, and that way we can take a request.
Otherwise, I'm not sure how you ever reach somebody who's not affiliated with an organization here
Right.
in town.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
It was my understanding that the council can't be involved in that. That was something that was stated last time.
Right, and I don't think that that's what's being proposed tonight. I think
Not
what's
at all.
Excuse me, Councilwoman Guzbowski?
Any book club member will tell you that the written word can be interpreted in different ways by different people. Religion, prayer, and the Bible are no exception. For example, religion has started wars. Religion has caused divorce, family disagreements, and isolation. Our pastors in town don't even get along. Some of the same Fountain Hills residents that said they are in support of the invocation are the same ones that spoke out against our sober living homes. Wars, isolation, and hypocrisy. None of that seems to be in line with what I remember from my Sunday school lessons on the life of Jesus. The Jesus that I remember learning about dined with and cared for the vulnerable. He cared for the weak and defenseless. He learned from them that he was open-minded to learn from those that didn't follow his teachings. All religions have basically the same foundation, the golden rule, a lesson that we learned in kindergarten: treat others as you want to be treated. Allowing all religions to participate in the invocation will remind us of this dogma by bringing the unity with the commonality of our various religions. The First Amendment dictates that we not promote one religion over another. So we're going to get around this by suggesting that they have to have a connection based on a certain time length and a substantial number of residents need to be members. Are we checking their voter registration, an electric bill, a driver's license? Are we asking them to register their religion? These requirements are excessive and make us look like we're only seeking input from certain religions that we deem acceptable. Also, I think we need to add a 3-minute invocation time limit, just like the public comment. There was a meeting in 2019, I think, where the pastor gave a sermon rather than a prayer. It lasted about 20 minutes. I think it was in the community center back in 2019. Also, for the record, if we're going to put in a 1-year time limit, I'm going to tell you, I want it on the public record that these religions are represented in Fountain Hills by people that have lived here for over a year. Not only Christians and atheists, but we've got Baha'i, Buddhist, Dudism, Flying Spaghetti Monster, Hindu, Jehovah's Witness, Jewish, Mormon, Muslim, Native Americans, Satanic Temple, Unitarian, Universal Life Church, and Wiccan. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. Just to address one of Peggy's concerns, my draft is actually more inclusive because not only does it invite the town to invite members to speak, but it also leaves the people, the other people that would like to speak, an opportunity to speak. And so it's allowing the public to approach us. Like Aaron said, if there's a filling, if there's an opening, this draft would allow them to fill that spot. And so I think it's allowing more people to speak, not less. And I think that's smart. As far as Ms. Grabowski is concerned, I think a 3-minute rule would, I would confer with that, and I think that's a good idea. I agree with Sharon.
I thought we already agreed on a 1 minute.
We didn't agree on
that. That's fine.
Councilwoman Toth?
Thank you. I would also concur on the 3-minute. I think it's fair to keep it the same as the public comment, so thank you for that. That would be my one amendment to this. I like your draft, Brenda, good job. The line that says, the town will not prohibit an organization from offering an invocation based on the content of the invocation or based on affiliation or non-affiliation with any religion or faith group or organization. That puts it, I mean, we already are aware of the fact that constitutionally we are unable to specify a religion, and that was never an intention, but I appreciate that we've solidified that language in this ordinance, which I don't believe is included in a lot of other municipalities. So that's my comment. Ding dong, Brenda, good job.
Thank you very much. Yeah, this would be a novel. This wasn't taken from another town. This was written by myself. Of course, the boilerplate was all what everybody else uses. And so I think that's very important. And just again, to go back to Vice Mayor McMahon, her concerns of non-discrimination, I think are very good concerns. And if you can read you can't read, but one of the headings here is policy of non-discrimination, and so that was actually included in my draft. And if that's your concern, that is on the new draft policy.
I still have problems with the last paragraph. I don't think there should be a year requirement. I just don't know how we're going to police that. I think that it was my understanding that if people wanted to have an invocation, they can send an email or call in. I didn't think we were having anything to do with that to avoid violation of the Constitution. I would like to have in there the voluntary participation. And it was my understanding that when Hannah and I were talking about, I said a year, she said a year and a half. I mean, an hour, a minute, and she said a minute and a half. I think a minute, like we were shown tonight, is more than sufficient for an invocation. This is a council meeting. It's not a church. And please don't take offense to that. But I think a minute is more than enough. It was very eloquent tonight. It was very well said. And it was directed to the council as it's supposed to be. So a minute is sufficient.
Who's going to police that? Are you going to pull your watch out and start kicking people out of here if they're a minute and 10 seconds? No, I think at least 2 minutes, but I'm okay with 3.
Who's going to police 3 minutes then? Well, it's the same thing with a minute.
Councilwoman Tulls?
I'm sorry. With the only amendment of creating a 3-minute time limit, I would like to, considering this, move to approve the draft that Brenda Kalvianakis submitted.
Second.
I don't think we're done discussing it, and you know, I wasn't done, I'm not done discussing it. I have gotten no response to what I was saying about the fact that a year is required, about what does substantial mean? I mean, how are you going to police people being in a congregation, et cetera? I just don't think that's our job, and I just don't think it's going to work. I mean, I don't think it's realistic, and it wasn't in Aaron's. There's no definition of substantial.
If I could make the recommendation, if we want a year in there as a council, then we ask the person, how long have you been here? They tell you a year, we trust them. That's what I feel like we need to do.
So if I'm here for 3 or 6 months as a snowbird, I can't give an invocation. And I'm a stakeholder, I own property, and I pay taxes.
I've owned property for at least a year, even if I only live here for 6 months.
I just don't think that a year is definitive.
So we have a motion and a second. I'd like to discuss something, but I guess do I have to make an amendment? I just wanted to put something out there that if somebody requests that they can't do like a slate, like they can't say, here's 5 names, you know, so it's got to be individual. That's, I'm okay with substantial connection. I kind of wish we didn't have the year thing in there. And I really think 3 minutes is kind of a lot for every meeting. But, so I would like to amend it that there's no slates that take out the 1 year and make it 2 minutes.
And I would also like to add to that.
Well, could you help me?
And add that voluntary
participation. You have to second it, maybe.
That voluntary participation, no one will be required to stand or participate in any invocation.
I think people can make their own choice for whether they sit or stand, and we've seen that already. Secondly, Mayor, to your point about a slate, there are a group of pastors that are together in this town, and if they decide to get together and submit a list of 4 or 5 people that want to do the invocation, I think it's a lot easier on our town staff that's going to be handling that to let them go ahead and do that. I don't see a problem with that. You call it a slate. I don't know if that's the right word that I would use, but anyway, there's a group of pastors in this town that get together, and I don't see any problem with that. That's just my 2 cents.
That is a
Council-
problem
excuse me,
because they're combined together and it can be seen as our dictating that Christian values, a single Christian value or a single religion is filling up the dates. And that was discussed before, and why we said individually they had to call in, because we have to be careful of not having it look like it's dictated to us.
Councilman, I would appreciate that because I think that it should be a fair process for everybody. So if there's an individual, they don't have 4 or 5 others that they can, you know, this would make it a fair playing field.
And let me
so
just
that-
correct one thing. They're not calling in. I thought it was the town manager or his designee that was going to contact them.
I think it's both, because we said if somebody contacted us.
If there was
and-
an opening?
Right. So again, to just be completely fair, following the law is doing things to all of us that we don't like, one way or the other. But we're following the law. And if we are going to be fair and take these phrases as they are, an individual or an organization of any faith or no faith, then we have to be fair on how we receive that. So whether it's us contacting them, we can't contact somebody and fill it in with 5 people. We contact one person, we contact another person, somebody contacts us. I don't think we should allow 5 or 6 or in one request. Let's put it that way.
Just to address that concern, Ms. Mayor, I don't think we have to codify that your concern in this draft. I think the draft does what the draft is supposed to do, but I think administratively, that you can give guidance to the town manager that we don't want to accept slates, that we're going to reach out to individuals. So I think that can be done administratively without being codified.
Well, I might have thought that, except then I just heard that I think that's what you want to do, so I don't know. I mean, we all got emails that were filled in with 5 or 6 names and was basically insisting we did those 5 or 6 names in a row the way it was presented to us. That's exactly what I don't think we should be doing. Right. I want it to just be a fair way of giving everybody the same opportunity to do this.
Yeah, first come, first served basis. That's part of it.
But again, to your point, I think if the intention is being mentioned here, but I think it's very important that we do it one person at a time.
Yeah, and I think that could be directed to town staff, and I think that's a reasonable request.
So we have the main, sorry if I may interject, Mayor. So just to clarify for everybody where we're at right now, and I know that we still have a public comment. So I don't know, Mayor, if you want to take the comment now and then address the motions that are on the floor. We also don't have a second for the amendment yet, so we can come back to that. Okay.
Crystal Kavanaugh.
Councilwoman McMahon, you're going to be really surprised. I'm actually in agreement with you. I, too, feel it should only be a minute, and I may be contradicting some people that I often agree with up here. It was a moment of silence. It was a minute. I think it should be that now. So I was really surprised when Sharon brought up 3 minutes. You're right, this isn't a church, and it should be a positive invocation or prayer or some positive message. I honestly feel it needs to have a Fountain Hills organization calling in with some representative giving the invocation. I feel like this is getting made way too big a deal out of. So we have 2 council meetings a month approximately. You have 12 months out of the year. That's 24 scheduling opportunities. I don't think that's going to overwhelm the staff. And then if it goes into a year and a half, fine. When you're talking snowbirds here for 6 months, that you lose me on, because it needs to be an organization based in Fountain Hills. I know the big thing is we don't want a Satanist. I don't know this flying spaghetti church you're talking about either, Sharon. And I don't think we have a satanic temple here in Fountain Hills. And that is why I do think it needs to be an organization. However, I'm going to disagree with you on something here. I don't care what anybody in the audience does. Stand, look around, not pay attention, I don't care. But I feel out of respect, every council member should be standing quietly. You don't have to bow your head, you don't have to close your eyes, but you shouldn't be shuffling papers and bending around or walking around the dais. That I do find offensive. It's just a lack of respect, period. And so I think I've pretty much covered all the things that were important to me and I actually heard, but that's all. I just don't want it to be like certain groups can sabotage this by sending in like 6 names all at once, and one's flying spaghetti, and one's satanic, and one's, or your worry, Christian, Christian, Christian. Who cares if it's Christian? And I'm going to tell you what, I don't even care if you have a satanic speaker. I'm not going to fall into their clutches just because someone speaks words for under 60 seconds, okay? So that's all I'm going to say. Common sense.
We received another comment card. Ted Blank.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My comment has to do with the first come, first serve. I believe that sets up a race condition which can make it very difficult for any group that isn't savvy with emails and so on. And it puts a difficult situation on the burden, a burden on the town manager to look up timestamps and so on. So as a statistician, my suggestion would be that you come up with a procedure where the town manager collects all the requests for an entire year, and then you select randomly from those requests for the upcoming year, so that there won't be a race condition that causes people to feel like if they're first in line, they can stack the entire year with their comments. So that would be my suggestion, would be to collect all the requests for the upcoming year, select them randomly. There will be more requests than there are opportunities, of course, but the random selection would allow there to be no possible way for someone to stack the deck with a slate or anything else like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. Just to comment on the time, the 1 versus 3 minutes. I think in a way we're kind of conflating our letters to the editor, to the Fountain Hills Times, or our speaker cards. You know, they give you 3 minutes, and boy, they go 3 minutes and 10 seconds, okay? When you write a letter to the editor, it's going to be 299 words because they limited it to 300 words. I don't think somebody giving an invocation is going to try to hit that 3-minute mark. I think they're just going to give a respectful invocation, and the clock is not going to be a concern. On the other hand, in respect for the vice mayor and respect for Sharon, I would be more than willing to go with split the baby, so to speak, to go 2 minutes. And I think maybe that we could all be happy with that.
So Aaron, I didn't get a second. Aaron, I'll make it easy on you. I didn't get a second. And if they go to the 2 minutes and we already talked about the slate stuff, then I'm good.
So Mayor, are you
So don't worry
withdrawing
about
your
my amendment.
Thank you. Okay.
So what did we say?
Second.
So on the table, we have a pending motion that has been seconded already, like 10 or 15 minutes ago, to vote for the proposed version that Councilmember Kalavianakis provided, with now assuming that Councilmember Toth is okay with that.
Yeah, can I agree with that
Toth is okay
amendment
with
and
that.
just?
Yes, that you can agree with the 2-minute provision.
I will amend my second.
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know who's, you seconded, I'm sorry, Councilmember. And is that it? No. As far as I'm concerned, I guess. Sorry, if there was something else.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was, I'm requesting to have a voluntary participation. No one will be required to stand or participate in any invocation, because sometimes people can be intimidated by it and not know what to do, but not, and I just think it's important that people know that They have the freedom to stand, sit, or whatever, and it's part of our policy.
What if I say what I usually do, which is, if you, what do I say? I say, I know I say something like, if you care, if you would like to join us, please stand for the pledge and the invocation. If I say that every time? Okay.
I don't feel like we need to put it in the policy because I'm going to tell you, your average attendee probably would not read the policy. Shake your head. Am I right, people? Would you not read the policy before you came? That's kind of what I figured. So I don't see that we need to put that in the policy. I am concerned that brick and mortar in town was discussed, so I hope we're not considering that, because we have a whole lot of religions that are represented here that go to church out of town. So I disagree that it needs to be local. Sorry, Crystal.
Did you have brick and mortar on this, what you wrote up, Brenda? I don't think you did. Okay. 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 Okay, we have a motion and a second, and I think a lot of discussion that'll help with putting this in place.
Can I request a roll call?
Oh, sure. We have a motion and a second. All those in, oops, we'll do a roll call.
Councilmember Toth.
Aye.
Councilmember Grzybowski.
Aye.
Councilmember Fidel.
Aye.
Councilmember Skillicorn.
Aye.
Councilmember Kalavianakis.
Aye.
Vice Mayor McMahon. Nay. Mayor Dickey.
Aye. Thank you, everyone. It's hard to get through this. Our next item is a community center storage pods. Grady?
Yes, Mayor and Council, at the last council meeting, we had an item on the agenda that our finance director, David Pock, presented. It had to do with budget transfers. These were routine budget transfers. During the discussion of that particular item, there were some council members that had questions about the intended use of the transfer monies for the Community Services Department that were going for 2 temperature-controlled storage pods that would be used for the community center. Our Deputy Town Manager, Community Services Director, Rachel Goodwin, will give you a report on this. We've had some change since the last time this was before the council, and that's why it's before you tonight. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Goodwin.
Thank you. Mayor and Council, thank you for having me back. I apologize, I'm a little scratchy tonight. If you can't hear me, I will do my best to speak up. I have learned a lot about storage pods in the last 2 weeks. There has been a lot of digging. You have a brief background in your packet, but I thought I would review quickly what the storage pods are for. I'd like to also pause and thank a number of council who reached out to understand, to take tours, to see firsthand what the storage was for. So thank you for your time. Quickly, the proposal before you is primarily to store our medical equipment. That is part of our medical equipment loaner program. The town has run the program since 2018. Previously, it was run by a church here in town. They just exceeded their capacity. They could not store it, nor could they facilitate the hours when folks could come and access the pieces. It was taken over at the urging by the town. Keep in mind that we do not rent, we do not charge for the items. We lend out more than 100 pieces annually. Currently, we have about 45 pieces out. In fact, we even lent out a piece this weekend so someone could access the car show. So I think that that is very telling to show how many people do use this resource in our community. The program also serves all. It's impartial. It's not dependent on income, age, race, culture, religion. It serves, I like to say it serves the little boy that, turned his ankle on the basketball court, and it also serves great-grandma when she needs to come to graduation. It runs the gamut. So it is a well-used program. In addition, we have some other storage challenges. I call it our seasonal storage. It's a lot of Christmas stuff. If you've been in the community center at Christmas time, we have dozens upon dozens of trees. We store about 10 of those, plus the large 24-foot tree, all the decor items that go with that. But it's more than that. It's our Make a Difference Day supplies. It's our home delivered meal supplies. It's our autumn harvest, our sock hop, our ping pong tables. It's a lot of stuff. So staff was asked to look into a number of storage options, which we did. Before you tonight is what I call our most aggressive path. It's 2 storage pods. It's 2 temperature-controlled storage pods, 20 foot each. They are insulated. What we are finding is that they have increased in price. We originally priced this out back in the fall. The pricing is going up, and that is really contributed from 2 factors. One, storage units are really popular in the tiny house movement. Secondly, they are also very popular for temporary housing as communities face the housing shortage. That being said, we are working to evaluate alternate options, including retrofitting or modifying one existing storage structure that we do have. I want to thank our Public Works and our facilities folks for meeting on site, really brainstorming options and throwing out ways that we can be logical and fiscally pragmatic. So I think that was the charge from council, and I'd like to say that I'm very impressed with our staff taking that very to heart. So the request before you tonight is an approval of a budget not to exceed $30,000, which allows staff to continue to explore all avenues and develop a storage solution that meets the needs of our programs, as well as preserves our limited fiscal resources. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Director. So just a quick question. We're currently using the shed to store the things, and really it's the issue of the summertime, and we have a little bit more material to store over the summertime because it's not used quite as much. If we delayed this, if we decided not to approve this, it doesn't end the program, right?
Correct. There's no intention to end the program.
So even if we voted no, it wouldn't end the program. And I thank you I did see the invoices here. Would this be quantity 2 of these 2 invoices, or?
No, that represents one storage unit. Just to give you a direct quote, that is uninsulated. That is a storage unit with an air conditioning, and that's it. Any additional add-ons, including insulation, including a doorway, are all upwards of that number. So it's not inexpensive. Which is why I do believe, like I said, us looking into alternative options, including retrofitting a piece that we do have to supplement one of these may be our best bet forward.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay. And then just a tiny bit of research I've done, I've actually found there's a gentleman in town that repairs this equipment, like mostly wheelchairs, and he actually runs it out of his garage on the north side of town. So it's just kind of funny that there's someone already kind of doing this, and he does it kind of on his own. But he's operating out of a one-car garage, kind of like we are in a sense.
Sure.
And I did reach out to the school district or someone on the school board. They did mention there's vacant space. I do kind of still wonder about transporting half of it to the school district in the summertime and half of it back in the fall. I mean, the volunteer could do that. Even I could do that. It seems to be a workable solution, but that's all.
I was going to press the button. I was just making sure you weren't talking to Hannah. I know I saw online somebody was questioning, let's evaluate this for a year and you can come back. I'm under the impression you've had the storage unit, I know almost since as long as I've known you, like 2019 or 2018. So we've basically already evaluated it and confirmed that it is a necessity that we have the storage. I know firsthand from visiting often that you get requests almost daily. So they're out there in the storage shed nearly daily grabbing whatever it is that they need. And I also know you guys are bursting out at the seams, and we can't just use one of your current classrooms to store these things.
That would not be, it would not be advisable in that it would take one of our classrooms offline with trying to serve our community and make sure that we have space available for all of our programs and rentals and meeting groups and whatnot. That would really disrupt that availability.
Rachel, thanks for all the work. We've had several conversations about this, and I just want our residents to know that we are really digging down to find the best possible solution and save the most amount of money, and Rachel and her group have done a good job. So I think it's possible that if we can work out, like Alan had suggested, something with the school to store long-term stuff up there, the stuff we need by the minute, hour, and day, it's impossible. We don't have the staff to be running around for that. So I like that idea, Councilman Skillercorn. If that does come to fruition, maybe we can explore that. It would help the school district out. It would help us out. But if we could do this with one storage unit and a retrofit and come in under budget, I think we give her the ability to explore that. And so I'm a yes on this. So at some point, I'll make a motion if we need it.
I'd like to make the motion.
I forgot to ask if there were
Okay.
any speaker cards. Sorry.
Yeah, there are.
Yes, we actually have some speaker cards and comment cards. At your station, you should have a comment from Stephanie Zopp. And then we have one from Jack Graham, and one from Liz Gildersleeve, and then we have 2 in-person comments. The first is Rick Watts.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. First, I'm really glad I picked this topic and not one of the other ones. Second, I am a proponent of the program. The program does a world of good for a lot of people that are in a lot of need. But I do question the necessity of having it climate control. I didn't see anywhere where any of the manufacturers were contacted about the temperature range that the equipment has to be kept within. I think that some of the deterioration that occurs is more wear and tear as opposed to temperature related. So I would ask that we consider that. And I would also consider from the standpoint of humidity control. That's probably more important than actual temperature control. You'll see that most of the equipment that is battery operated has a wide range of application where it can operate. Following that, are we anticipating the total cost of ownership over the life of the pods themselves? You factor in maintenance costs, repair costs, ongoing utility costs, all of those components that are, again, attributable to the temperature component that I don't really think is a necessity. I think what you'll find in town is that most of the storage facilities are not climate controlled, and there's not a negative impact on the equipment that's stored there. It is a comfort consideration, and if there was long-term involvement, if staff was down there for an hour or 2 a day getting what they needed to get, but it sounds more like it's an in and out type of a situation where comfort is not necessarily the primary responsibility or the primary criteria. So I think those things I would ask you to take into consideration before approving or moving forward with a climate control. I don't think we have an extreme situation. I think that the term extreme, if you're out working in the environment, you get used to it. So it's not necessarily extreme, and I would ask that we look at the manufacturer's recommendation for operating parameters. Thank you.
And we have one more speaker card, but they're electing to comment in writing that they're for the purchase of the storage pods.
Thank you. Any further questions, discussion?
Rachel, I did ask you about maintenance. Would you like to cover that?
You did. One of the questions was the operation of the air conditioning unit. Obviously, that is a seasonal, and ideally, the unit would. And I'd like to say we've been definitely working towards making sure that we are within the manufacturer's operations. We've been talking with Justin about what is a reasonable temperature in the dead of summer when it's 120 outside. Maintaining probably mid to upper 80s, probably an 85-degree temperature is the ideal situation, so that it's not getting so hot that things are melting, splitting, cracking. Sticky is really the answer here. But the operation is pretty nominal. The maintenance, thankfully, is very low as well. These are storage pods. These are units that are used for shipping. They're airtight. They're watertight. They come painted and sealed. If we would need to do long-term painting, if we would need to repaint in, say, I don't know, 8 to 10 years because of just rust or wear and tear, imagine that would be relatively nominal as well. They're not for aesthetics by any means. They're not out front. They are tucked behind the community center. It's really about function and not the, the beauty of each piece, so to speak. So the additional cost that would be associated with this would be to run the electrical that would be needed to operate the cooling units. We've been working with Justin to see how we can make that happen in-house, and we believe that there's sufficient access back behind the community center to do that.
And the painting can be done in-house as well, right?
I would think.
Thank you. If we're done with discussion, I'd like to make a motion.
I just have one more thing to discuss before the motion, please.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to say my support for this expenditure. This first came to my knowledge when I was in the Leadership Academy way back when, and we did the tour, and I wasn't on the town council then. I was just a regular person, and your staff had addressed this issue back then. They said, look at this big building and look at this small storage area we have. And everyone thinks it's a huge building and they should have a big storage area. They don't. And if we don't help them with storage, then we're going to have to start closing down rooms that are usable right now for mahjong or whatever, basically a lot of the seniors use during the daytime. I think that'd be a terrible thing. And so, based on our vote last 3 weeks ago, I did do the tour with you. We looked at it, we eyeballed it, you discussed what the needs were. I talked to other staff that had been in the community center for years, and they're like, we really need this, Brenda, we really need this. And so based on that, I changed my mind, and I just want to say I'm very much in support of this.
I move to approve a budget transfer not to exceed $30,000 for the purchase and installation of 2 storage pods, finally.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Our last action item is relating to the League of Cities and Towns Legislative Bulletins. Grady, did you want to kick it off?
Yes, so Mayor and Council, in your packet, we have the legislative bulletin that is published by the League of Arizona Cities and Towns. And we also had a number of council members, I recognized the mayor and some staff people who were in on the legislative call that we had this week as well. And I just have a few, if you don't mind, that I'm going to just cover, and then we've talked about some of the other ones as well. But one that I thought was noteworthy was House Bill 2418. This has to do with law enforcement response times. This would be basically an unfunded mandate that would establish minimum response times of 5 minutes or less for law enforcement to respond to emergencies. So the concern there is it's not really defined as what an emergency really is. And so as we know, we have a priority system for law enforcement for MCSO to respond to calls for service. The other thing is that if you don't meet those response times, you'll have like a year to try to get up to that speed. And then if you don't get there, then you have to come up with an action plan. And so the concern is this is really almost like a mandate to add additional law enforcement officers. So cities that have their own police departments, and those of us that are under contract with MCSO, I think that this is just really not a good piece of legislation for cities and towns. It doesn't give the cities and towns the ability to really, we obviously want to maintain low response times because that's really very important. But this is one that I think is just taking away a little bit too much control from local governments. The other one that we spent probably the most time yesterday on the phone, it was yesterday, sorry. And that was Senate Bill 1117. This is basically zoning by right, and it would allow homes that you have lots right now where basically you would be allowed to have additional dwelling units built on your property. even though the zoning may not allow for it today. And so the idea is that advocates are advocating for this because it would create additional, they're claiming it to create additional housing developments, affordable housing. But part of the issue with this is that there also could be single occupancy types of rooms. So you're really talking about like neighborhoods that might actually have boarding houses. So that's a totally different change from what neighborhoods are today. This would also not have any kind of public process, such as planning and zoning or council. So any involvement with some of these types of developments that the council currently enjoys the ability to have the ability to weigh in, they would not have that ability. There's a lot more other issues with this, but I think this is one that the League is really urging cities and towns to get their councils to oppose. And then the only other one, Mayor and Council, is Senate Bill 1162. This is basically allowing property owners to have, as a matter of right, they can have home-based businesses. Right now, we allow home-based businesses. There's no issue with that, but this could take it to another level. This could take home-based businesses to having auto mechanics working in their homes, manufacturing, things that we would typically not want to see or have in our neighborhoods currently, because it would change the character of neighborhoods. So those are three that I thought were probably the most onerous of the bills that are being considered.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, oh crap, which was the first one you read? 2418, right?
Yes.
According to my notes, that not only is it the 5-minute response time, when they conduct their annual review, if we're out of compliance, we only have 60 days to get in compliance, not a year. It's 60 days.
Thanks for that correction.
And what was the other thing that the next one was that I wanted to talk about was the Senate Bill 1117. No P&Z, no council, no public engagement. And I don't know that I understand this type of housing, but not only did he say it's very, very bad, but he went so far as to mention we could be stuck with dorm-style apartments. And, in my mind, I want to say loft, but he actually used the word dorm style. So I don't know what that is, but I don't know that we would be pleased with that. Was there anything else that I saw that I wanted to bring up? No, I guess not. Okay, thank you.
Yes, I've seen a couple of them. I think I think it's SB 1063 and HB 2061, stop taxing groceries. And if this bill is passed, it would ban cities from charging sales tax on food items for your homes. And as a result, our town would lose millions of dollars annually. We cannot afford to lose millions of dollars annually. One argument is that this will adversely affect the people on food stamps, et cetera. It will not affect them at all. They are already provided for. Also, SB 1184, stop rental taxes, would ban cities from charging sales tax on rent for residential dwellings, et cetera, for up to 4 units. Again, that would prevent a lot of revenue from coming into Fountain Hills. And there's another one that says stop rental taxes, taxes on rental properties. I think that that one should be opposed because, again, it is going to really adversely affect our income to the town. And we rely on this transaction privilege taxes because we do not have real property taxes. So it doesn't make any sense to oppose these, especially if you have budget concerns, because I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to say, okay, let's cut out all this income, and then we don't have enough money to cover streets or cover anything in the budget. I mean, that's just ridiculous. There is another one, HB 2284, homeless housing tents. It would make it a crime for a homeless person to put up a tent. I mean, that's going a little bit too far. I don't think that's appropriate. And then I think it's HB 2003 to lower corporate income tax. Well, if you think about, our corporations already have low income tax thresholds. We are going to, from what I've seen today through MAG and the Arizona Commission, Economic Commission, we are going to see over the next 10 years, billions of dollars of growth. If we start lowering corporate tax more than it even is now over a period of time, we're not going to be able to take advantage of any of those billions of dollars. And again, that's going to that would decimate our budget. So I think that for all the financial reasons and more, we should oppose those bills.
Thank you. So the combination of the food tax bill and the rental and the corporation one wouldn't set in right away, but the total of those would be, in today's dollars, $2.9 million per year removed from the Fountain Hills, but from our revenue. So that's a big deal. It's not just like a one-shot deal. The 1122 effectively defunds Valley Metro on destabilizing our, it's basically a kind of a Prop 400 extension, but it's not going to help at all. It's actually going to hurt. So then there's one we actually support. 2536, which is administrative review approvals, puts more in John's purview there rather than ours, and it's actually a league resolution. And so that one we would support. Another one that's hurtful, I don't exactly know how much because I didn't get a chance to talk to David, but the one that says 1245 BLT taxes all have to be put towards transportation. And I don't know how that would work in our community because, we get the shared revenue, which is VLT, income tax, sales tax statewide, we get our share. And I don't know how much of that, we could say, okay, it goes to transportation because we don't spend a lot on transportation. So that could potentially hurt us too. So we will take positions on bills at times. And in this case, most of them I think have been through committees. So it would probably be a matter of Grady having to write a letter either to the next committee up, since we missed some of them already, or to the floor, the president or the speaker, if it gets to the floor of those. So I can run down those, but I want to know if anybody has an objection to us taking, and by the way, these are all either league opposed or league supported, so it's the League of Arizona Cities and Towns, and they don't always do that, but this time they are actually taking a lot of these stands. So we can talk about them more, or we can talk about having Grady, especially with the tax bills and the law enforcement one and the 1117 one. We definitely need to do those.
I just wanted to mention that the food, municipal tax exemption, and the rental exemption is only from town funds. It's not affecting the state budget at all. What they're looking at messes with our budget and our revenue. So that's one of, I think, the things that upsets me more is not only are you telling us where to spend our money, like the VLT or some of this other stuff, but now you're screwing with our budget and not even yours. So I think that's what really upsets me about that is I get that you want to cut taxes. I'm all for that. But cut your taxes. Don't take it out of our kitty because we already have this stuff pegged for all sorts of different things. It's a whole new budget conversation.
Yes, we do. Kim Waborski.
So glad my husband comes up here all the time because you can pronounce my name. It's wonderful. So I have a couple of things. I agree with Councilmember Grzyskowski that this is, although it's lovely to cut taxes, I love less taxes, that we do need to fund our streets. We really need to fund our street repairs. And cutting out the food tax is, you know, maybe this isn't the time for that. But what I also wanted to answer was Vice Mayor McMahon's thought about the homeless tents. I know it sounds really cruel and unkind to make that illegal, but I have to tell you, I moved here from Seattle, Washington in 2019, and I have seen that. I have seen what it's like. For me to leave my office in Seattle, I had to drive through homeless encampments, and people would come out onto the streets, out onto the freeways. I mean, it started out really small, and it just got bigger, and it spread to the suburbs. It's just such a horrible thing, and it's so sad, and it's so bad for the people who are in the tents. It's not a good solution for them. Those things just become, it's just heartbreaking. You know, there's just like so many drugs, so much alcohol. It's just like a nonstop party for people who shouldn't be partying. So I just wanted to say, even though it sounds like an unpleasant law, I do support it. So thank you.
Thank you. That bill's a little weird anyway. It's kind of hard to explain it. It's actually, it's forcing cities to do something, but not giving them the money to do it. So that's why it's being opposed. So it's like you have to ban it, but then you're on your own. So, you know, it's obviously such a huge problem everywhere. But this is just a kind of a punishment thing again for a city that maybe can't do anything about it right now. So I think that was the basis for the league saying they opposed it. But I mean, we don't have to necessarily take a stand on all of these bills. But were you going to say something, Sharon? I saw your light.
Actually, I was going to say exactly what you said. To me, it's less about the illegal portion of it, but more about here you are helping us spend our money again. We have to send our resources, whether it be the MCSO or code, or we don't have the funding behind that. So they're asking us to do something without funding it. That, I think, to me, is my big pet peeve there. Again, you're helping me spend my money. I can do that myself.
So at the minimum, I would ask that we would oppose 2418, the law enforcement one, the VLT 1245, support 2536 because that's a administrative review for development, and definitely oppose, and there's a lot of those tax bills, I can give you the numbers of them. It's 1063, 1089, 1184, 2061, 2067, and 2003. And then 1117, 1117, that one, seriously, it's no density, height, they're all unregulated, no P&Z, no public notice, no council vote, essentially eliminates single-family zoning, no design reviews, no sidewalks, open space, landscaping, garages, all those things we talk about when someone wants to build something. It would just not be something that we could do. And I think that you should be aware of the home-based business one too, because that goes into this discussion of group homes and anything, because this is home-based businesses by right. And it could even be like a car repair, so.
Yeah, he specifically mentioned, I see dentists, I see auto mechanics, and there was a third one that he mentioned that I didn't make a note of, that we would all not want that as our neighbor. Yeah.
So that's 1162. I'm not sure what the motivation for that one is, but I think it's something that we would want to oppose.
Mayor, if we're looking for something unanimous, I think the only one the only ones that I agree with are like the local zoning issues that we want to have control over. So if we're looking unanimous, that's what I'd recommend. But otherwise, there's some here that I'm okay with, or I have a differing opinion.
From what I do is I can kind of read that there's a consensus on this. Typically, we've had debate on those where, very clearly there's, opposing views on certain bills. And so I'm not going to put a letter and stick my neck out on a bill that there's obviously divisiveness on the council, but it appears that there's consensus on the ones that we've talked about tonight. And it sounds like, Councilmember Skillicorn doesn't necessarily agree with all of them, but there appears to be, at least as, without voting on this, consensus.
Yeah, just so I'm on the record, I do support the mayor's slate and all of that you said there. I'm for that.
Okay, we're adjourned, no. Our next item is discussion direction to town manager.
Mayor, may I? Of course. Thank you, Mayor. For town, or actually, I want to make a couple of motions for future agendas. The first one is I do want to make a motion to put on the agenda the P&Z recommendation for the commercial detoxes that passed unanimously back on January 9th. I do have a quick question. I don't know if we need to notice 15 days for a hearing, though. That's my belief.
We do, so we would, of course, if you wanted to just discuss it without acting on it, then no. But in order to make that change, John, we are recommending that come for public hearing process? Trying to remember what we ultimately decided.
Mayor and Council and Mr. Arnson, there is a provision in the zoning ordinance that when P&Z has held a public hearing, that a public hearing isn't necessarily required at council. We typically do just to make sure our bases are covered if somebody has a question or objection.
Okay.
But we can have this on the next council meeting.
Thank you for the reminder.
So I would like action, so I wouldn't mind the clock starting for the 15 days.
Wasn't this already noticed in P&Z?
Yes, we did have a notice public hearing at P&Z. So the ordinance does allow us to have it on the council without another public hearing.
So we need an additional notice to the P&Z notice?
No, it's not required. Typically we do it, but it's not required.
Okay.
I would like to go, but what we typically do is notice it.
So if I can, John, this is the one I think that Councilmember Calavianakis, we were going to have this on the agenda because there were support for 3 to put it on, and then there was one that withdrew their support. So we had done a public hearing, but then it didn't end up being on the agenda.
I think this one is the commercial detox.
Commercial detox. I apologize. I thought I heard you say sober living, so I apologize.
I mean, if we have 2 seconds, I'd like to have that.
Okay.
Is there 2 seconds?
Second.
Yes, please. Would this be an action item? Yes. No? Well, I think, so we need, typically we do a hearing. So I'd like to do it the way we typically, I don't want to do it in a new, unusual way. I'd like to do it at the hearing.
Okay.
So we need to have a notice for that hearing.
Right. So I don't know that means there's enough time for the 21st, but it would be the meeting following that. Am I right, John?
You're correct.
Thank you.
So just for clarification, what meeting, for the record, when is that going to be then, John?
So we could notice on the 15th and the 22nd. So we could have it on March 7th.
Okay, March 7th. And you're talking about the recent ordinance that came from P&Z?
Yes, the one that was passed on January 9th.
Yes, okay.
I'm still very confused, excuse me, but if this thing was already noticed in P&Z and it's moved up to town council, we don't need an additional notice. No, we don't.
Well,
this can be placed on the 21st agenda for an action item.
If there's consensus in 2 seconds to move it on the 21st, that's fine.
We were just following the consensus, or the direction of the sponsor of this, so.
If there's consensus in 2 seconds, we can do the 21st.
Put it on the 21st, please.
Okay.
Yes.
The next one, so agenda item for the retreat, I would like to have an agenda item on combating homelessness in town. Can I get a pair of seconds?
You had previously asked me, and that's on the agenda already. And you also had another one that you had.
Yeah, I want to have a
Streets
roads first resolution for budgeting also on that.
Okay.
And then this is not a agenda item, but I would love if, I don't know if it would be Mr. Wesley or someone from code enforcement, when we had was it? I forget her name. She came in and mentioned the complaint she had about the construction debris on her property. I'd love to hear
Ms. Stokes.
Stokes. Yeah, Amy Stokes was it? I would love to hear maybe once a month, like a list of of code enforcement complaints, just so we're aware of where things are moving.
So
Or at least an update. I think
Okay.
council should have an update of what's going on there.
So what I do typically on these is you'll see an email back from me that indicates that the matter's been resolved or it might be coming back before council. Not saying that this specific one, but I will be sending an email off. So if there's a way, we'll talk about it. We'll figure out a way
my
to get
intent
it.
is not to find out during a meeting. My intent is we actually could see it and maybe address it before,
I believe-
residents, I don't think should wait.
Yeah, hasn't John, we've been getting those updates every month.
I don't think there was anything specific though. Of course, I didn't know about this.
Oh, you mean like which actually?
Yeah, I'd really like to, know that those are taken care of.
I so noted, and I'll work with staff on trying to figure out what you're asking for.
Great, thank you so much.
Quickly, I would like to submit for the third time my request to discuss the roundabout. I believe my original wording was, let me unlock my thing real quick. I'd like to submit a request for the discussion and possible action item of termination of the roundabout and grand staircase capital projects and transfer of these funds for design or development to road maintenance on the it was originally supposed to be on the 117 agenda. This was an email sent on January 6th, so I apologize. On the February 21st agenda. Thank you.
Well, anyway, asking to have something on the agenda doesn't mean which agenda it has to be on, and it is on the retreat, just like every capital project is. And so, and as you know, we went to Chamber and tried to get some information from them. And it's a work in progress, but obviously, as we move forward, this is something that we'll discuss. So it's not an item for an actual, excuse me?
Point of order, the rules allow agenda items to be proposed.
Oh, yeah, I know. She did propose it.
That actually does remind me of a second item I'd like to request for the February 21st agenda. And that would be an update to Council Rule 4.2B, paragraph 2, to require that be when 3 council members request for something to be on the agenda, that is then on the next available agenda. So if an agenda's full, understood, but the next available agenda.
Well, I think we discussed that too, that's fine, but that's not possible because we have to have staff involvement. So that's really why it doesn't go on the next agenda. If you send me a note.
I specifically said next available agenda, and I'll follow those requests up in an email as well. Thank you.
Well, we have 2 people saying that, so we'll talk about that later. That is it, unless there's anything else. Okay.
So hold on. Sorry, before we leave. The way that I understood this is that we want 3. So is there that's what the policy states. Yeah, so we got number 2 from Councilmember Skillicorn. Did we get a number 3 for Councilwoman Toth?
It'll be on the 28th.
I'm talking about either item.
We're discussing it at the retreat.
Mm-hmm.
3, with respect to both of her items? Okay, I'm glad, then that doesn't leave me wondering what happened, okay?
And just to be technical really quickly, the council rules do state by written request, so if we could just all write an email to follow up with that. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Okay, good night, we're adjourned.